wondering probably why I sound like this. It's because this is President's Day, and I want to introduce you with some narration. I've been messing around some stuff as a free time today, and decided to do a little bit of a voice changer. And we're just like I said in the last stream, but you probably was not able to hear me because there was another person talking. It was because I made the most craziest mistake possible, and that mistake was I turned on a lower third, but I didn't transition it over and out when I didn't need it. So all you heard was this guy talking about HIV reverse transcriptase the entire the entire time. And I looked back and my mom's like, okay, yeah, it's not giving what it needs to give. So, in hopes of that, here I am today trying to redeem myself because there are some great stories, great information, but also I want to make sure that you are able to hear that, right? And then, to be honest, funny story. Back in college, back in the days when I was in college, I worked at a news station called WEIU News, and this was my first time on the CG operator. And basically, I call up lower thirds, put down lower thirds when the technical director called them, and I would put them up. Y'all, I did not rehearse, and I was putting all types of wrong. I was putting up all types it up, and I was like, what the actual? But luckily, the show went on, right? But my news director, she burned a new in my, and I tell you, she was not fucking playing with me. But I was like, you know what? It is what it is. We just go take this as a lesson and move forward. So with that being said, hello, and welcome everyone. My name is Dion Dusty Lion, and I'm so excited for you to be here and for you to be here with me today. Again, I just like this little voice changer because it's like kind of funny and cool, but I'll turn back my regular voice. I just want to thank you all for joining me again. If you're joining us for a second time, or if you're seeing this for a second time, thanks for joining. Today we're going to be discussing news around entertainment, public health, local and national events, and what you can do to get involved with community action, community mobilization, all that great stuff. And I'm rocking my little Black Lives Matter headband. I'm feeling like I'm straight out of like a Naruto episode. I feel like a character. I feel seen today, right? I'm like, I got the glasses, I got the headband, I got the high collars. I'm giving very Shino-esque, Shikamaru-esque. I forgot his name, but he's from like the Lightning Village. Is where most of the black people are from. But any much, I get back to topic. I just want to take a moment and just recognize my look today. Okay, I hope you are looking great. You're feeling well too, because we're just here to talk about some great news, some great stories that's happening. But I hope you are excited just as much as I am, because I am beyond excited. But before we dive into the news and all of the great things, you know how we start our sessions off. So get your nice cup of whatever you want. It could be vodka, it could be tea, it could be water, whatever. This is my cup of tea. And before we begin, I want to go ahead and give you a dab of that tea. Bing! Oh yeah. That's some good turmeric and honey. And I want to thank my supporters for helping me develop this, get better at this. And I want to also thank my YouTube teachers as well, because this streaming stuff is like really technical, but it could be really, really fun going through all of it and just building this all out. This is my first experience. I delved into this with some clients way back in 2020 with OBS. And honestly, I kind of put the OBS stick down for a bit and I picked it up and I'm like, put it back down again, and now it's back up, and now it's up again. But anywho, throughout the stream, I encourage you to ask questions that you may have. I have the chat here ready in front of me, and I would love to have a discussion with us back and forth, see what happens. So if you have any questions about my headband or about the story, feel free to drop that in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer the questions. But in the meantime, in between time, let's go ahead and jump into our stories for today. And I mean, honestly, we have some really, really great stories for today. Let me just throw up my name because I completely miss my cue. But I'm going to throw that up there so you all know who I am. But going off into it, we're going to start off with our story about a beautiful, beautiful story. And this is for our HIV advocates across the world, particularly Mary Lucy and Nancy Jean McNeil. No relations. And it's spelled McNeil. But anywho, I want to go ahead and take a moment of silence before we begin. Unfortunately, we are sending Nancy and Mary, our angels, back home. We've lost two phenomenal activists, advocates, community builders. Last week, Mary Lucy and Nancy and Jean McNeil, they were a couple and were about married about 30 plus years. They help help launch the ACT UP Los Angeles Oral History Project and fought for a women's issue. Unfortunately, they died last week and within hours of each other. If you're not familiar with the ACT UP campaign, I encourage you to look into that. I was not familiar with it myself and still learn a lot about it to this day, but it is such it's cutthroat. It's like being on a ballroom dance floor and just being cunt. ACT UP was just very cunt with the world, right? The world was turning a blind eye to HIV along with the president, and people got tired. People act up, right? But Nancy and Mary took on this and brought it into the universe back in the 1990s, where they joined in and got more involved, where they elevated issues of women, prisoners, and people living with HIV. And although we are saying goodbye to Nancy and Mary, I want to go ahead and give a little bit of recognition to what they done and what they contributed to the world as we know it today. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in the chat. Feel free to read more about Nancy and Mary. I think the work that they've done is inspiring. And on to our next story I have with us in our first story, I would say, but the story that was so loud, so frustrating, and most folks were like, I can't hear you, Dion. What are you saying? And to be perfectly honest, I'm going to tell you what this little video is, because you're probably like, why am I seeing this little thing and it's doing this like sexual thing, and what's happening, Dion? But actually, this is a graphic, but the story itself is recognizing the frustrations from researchers after an HIV vaccine trial had failed. And it failed pretty bad. A lot of them feel really bad about it, but it failed to be successful in preventing being a prevention regimen. Excuse me. The Mosaico trial tested the efficacy and safety of a preventative regimen of 2 vaccines against HIV in more than 50 sites in 8 countries, including Spain, Argentina, Mexico, Peru, and Brazil. And since its first appearance in the United States, and of course the intersection of modern medicine, an HIV vaccine has been long sought to be developed, such as the GP160 subunit vaccine in 1987, all the way to 2009 phase 3 Thai trials of the RV144, which is better known for, to this date, according to the NIH, a large clinical study to demonstrate efficacy for an HIV vaccine. On January 18th, the HIV Vaccine Trials Network, also known as HVTN, the organization behind the clinical research based at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center in Seattle, shared that the trial had been discontinued following the disappointing results of a planned interim reviewed by the study's independent data and safety monitoring board. Although the vaccine was, quote, generally safe and well tolerated, the board determined the regimen was not effective in preventing infections compared with placebo. Good call, board, because if you kind of have that as your result, I'm not sure if it's generally safe, and it may be well tolerated. But anywho, it got stopped. Pedro Khan, who's the scientific director of the Hughes Foundation in Buenos Aires, which recruited about 120 participants for the Mosaico trial, stated, quote, "We are, of course, very frustrated. We would have loved to have helped develop an HIV vaccine, but this demonstrates the unique challenges of developing a vaccine and reinforces that we have to keep doing everything that we already know works. Comprehensive sex education, testing, pre-exposure prophylaxis, which is also known as PrEP, and the immediate start of treatment based on the understanding that undetectable HIV is untransmittable," which means, getting folks to test to learn if they are HIV positive, and then also get them into care to make sure that they're able to receive treatment, and then they are able to stay into care. Sorry, I made that like ugly face. I had to sneeze, and I'm just like, the HIV virus is quite smart and it's very unique, which is why I have this little graphic here next to me, because it really shows how the HIV virus can mutate when it becomes resistant. Those two prongs at the top of the virus shows its resistance, which is called the mutated reverse transcriptase, and I want to make sure I'm saying that correctly. But this is why your doctors encourage you to stay on your HIV regimen and stick to the time and date every day of taking your medication, because if this virus that's within you becomes mutated, it can be pretty dangerous. That means that you now have to switch to a new medication, and hopefully that medication works, or that medication has to be increased, and who knows what those side effects are. I'm not trying to scare you, but I just want to encourage you to stay on your regimen. Life happens. Sometimes you miss a day. Just be sure you just take a pill as soon as you remember, and then continue back onto your routine. But sometimes the virus reverse transcriptase can become resistant when you avoid taking your medication. This causes it to mutate, which you can see over here next to me, preventing your HIV medicine from really helping you, and also blocking the virus from producing the RT, blocking the RT from producing more viruses and replicating itself, thus increasing your viral load and making you sick. So even though we have a pretty good, effective strategies and prevention treatments out there, the search for the vaccine has to remain a top priority. Why? I mean, consider how quickly we were able to develop a vaccine for COVID-19 and its family members, okay? Like, we did that Operation Warp Speed, we did that pretty quickly, and I get it. HIV doesn't affect everyone, right? It's not affecting little kids. I mean, you have the story of Ryan White, and you have other stories that are like that as well. And you have it affecting elders and people who are older, maybe people who are getting back into the scene and want to spice up their life, and maybe just made a mistake and now they have HIV. Well, unfortunately, that's not the concern of billionaires and large corporations, because hey, the medicine and the money is in the management of your illness, not necessarily the cure. But I mean, if you're curious to learn more about what I'm talking about and what I'm rambling about, I mean, regardless, there's great research out there, and there are great people out there that is trying to produce a vaccine and a cure, as you can see. However, I encourage you to do some research on your own and look into one of the many great founders, I would say, who discovered a cure for a lot of illnesses and diseases that we treat and manage every day. This doctor is known as Dr. Sebi. He was included in a Supreme Court trial against an attorney general of the New York. Why did I say it like that? Of New York, and he was actually being sued for false advertisement in practice without a license. The court found that he was doing all this and selling this medication. He was saying that he can cure HIV and lupus and herpes, and people didn't believe him. But you know what he did? He did what he had to do. He called in his receipts, and he brought in 78 witnesses who showed proof that they were cured from their illnesses. I mean, cure of HIV and lupus and herpes and many other things, diabetes, you name it, that they had experienced. And he did that all through this really organic, natural process of healing the body. But I encourage you to look into it. Actually, I think there was Nipsey Hussle was actually producing and working on a documentary about this. But of course, he was murdered, and Nick Cannon decided to take on that mantle to produce this film. I've yet to hear much about the film since 2020, I want to say. I think he went through a lot of fiasco with the network of his Wild 'N Out TV series and just the contracts and that. Honestly, I think he probably just put that on pause. And I really hope that either him or someone in the community will pick up this story or this case and share this story, because it's truly, I think it would truly awaken a lot of people's minds to what we are capable of and what's already out here as far as resources and things that we can use. But on to the beautiful next story that I have here for us today. We have a interesting case coming up in front of us, and I mean huge case. If you're a streamer like myself, or if you are a content creator, on February 21 and of course on the 22nd, which is tomorrow and Tuesday or Wednesday, the United States Supreme Court is scheduled to hear arguments in cases involving the content moderation practices of social media platforms. This could reshape the foundation of the internet and will more likely affect many content creators, especially ones that are seeking fame on the tailwinds of headlines by big operations or organizations or businesses. But if the Supreme Court decides to pull back on Section 230, YouTube, and other social media platforms, we'll see quite a bit of change, and I'm not sure if a lot of folks will be happy about that. Section 230 is a provision in the Communications Decency Act of 1996, a U.S. federal law. It is a law that shields online platforms and internet service providers, also known as ISPs, from being held legally responsible for content posted by their users. In essence, Section 230 says that online platforms are not considered the publisher. Quotes, I did it down here, but I'm gonna bring it up here, but aren't considered the publishers of user-generated content, and therefore are not liable for the content that users post. The law was originally intended to encourage the growth of online platforms and encourage them to moderate their sites to remove offensive or illegal content. Section 230 has been credited with the growth of the internet, social media, and other online platforms. I mean, honestly, we should give thanks to Section 230. Can we just give it like, But anywho, a lot of critics are arguing that it has allowed platforms to shirk responsibility for harmful content, including hate speech, disinformation, and other harmful content. There have been ongoing debates in recent years about the need to reform Section 230 to better balance the need of free expression and content moderation on online platforms. And I see that I'm getting a call from Walgreens because they got my refill prepared, but I'm gonna do that afterwards. Let me go ahead and continue with the show. And then on to our next brilliant story. I'm gonna pull down that lower third. See? That's how I do it. That's how you do it. I did that there. But if you want to learn more about that particular story, I'll go ahead and post that in the chat. I found a few articles that I sourced my story from. If you are eager to learn more about it, feel free to dive on into that bad boy. But going on to our next story is something I just feel so cringy about. But you know what? I mean, I don't know what to say. I just gotta throw up lower third and see what you guys think. But nothing screams entrenched stigma and prejudice like a good old-fashioned policy update full of breadcrumbs. However, you can still make bread with breadcrumbs. If you know, you know. Okay? Okay. The U.S. Food Administration and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration announced on January 27, 2023, that they are proposing a change from the time-based deferrals to assessing blood donors' eligibility using gender-inclusive, individual risk-based questions to reduce the risk of transfusion-transmitted HIV. A great example. I would say a great example of this would be the Ryan White story, or the situation that occurred. He was a teenager, very young, and he was going to receive a blood transfusion. I believe he was experiencing hemoglobin. The disease, I think he had that, so he would need transfusions. So it turns out that this transfusion that he received actually was diagnosed with HIV, and no one knew. So when he got the transfusion, he was HIV positive. But if you want to learn more about that, I encourage you. I talked about it in a video and one of my speeches that I did. But that's really the programs that we see right today in Illinois, the White program that fund a lot of the initiatives and programs within the HIV section. Anywho, the new regulations, basically, this means that the FDA could consider donors based on their sexual behaviors, regardless of their orientation. This sounds good, right? Like I said, breadcrumbs. You want to make bread, you can, depending on who you are. The new regulation would allow gay and bisexual men to donate blood if they're monogamous. The proposal will also, for the first time, defer anyone from donating if they have had new or multiple partners in the past 3 months and had anal sex during that time. The changes could open a door to many gay and bisexual men who were previously and wrongly excluded, helping shore up the U.S. lagging blood supply. The new policy narrow focus on anal sex and monogamy still fails to assess sexual risk for HIV accurately, and it continues to stigmatize people based on their sexual activity. I mean, think about it. Sex work is work. I'm going to repeat that more and more and more and more, but I feel like a lot of this is coming out of a very heteronormative lens perspective. It's kind of like, I'm not going to say have you ever, and I don't think I've ever been, but hypothetically, imagine someone going on a date, 2 queer people, and they're at this beautiful restaurant, it's just scenic. There's the music playing in the background, there's candles lit, there's roses and flowers, and there's rainbow flags. It's very queer friendly. They get in there. The person who's on a date, I'm going to call them 1, right? 1 is meeting 2. 2 is the other person. Follow me. So 2 and 1 are at this date. They're sitting down. And, 1 is talking to 2. And 2's like, yeah, you know what? I like men. And 1's like, hey, me too. I like men too. We have that in common. They're like agreeing to that. But then 2 takes a whole left turn and spews out, I like men, but also I think that HIV contraceptives and women having rights, it's just a little bit too obsessive. We need to go back to how it was when America was great, right? And once sorry, I'm getting into this, but 1's like, what the is going on here? And 2's like, but yeah, you feel me? And 1's like, no, I actually, I don't feel you. But this is what this feels like. It feels like it's, although we're again, breadcrumbing, I'm getting you there, it's still giving that sort of heteronormative perspective on what is deemed good or clean, what is deemed a standard of health within the queer community. And we all know that in the queer community, there are more ways to for sexual pleasure besides anal sex, right? But a lot of this doesn't account the evidence and the things that are out there that is proof of how the queer community has been protecting themselves and being proactive with things like this to be included, right? But we're just not there. But although there are many prevention methods available, ones I mentioned earlier, did you know the FDA's revised guidelines do not take into account these prevention methods? the FDA would continue to require individuals to be off of PrEP by the one and two. They didn't start that. I know I didn't complete the story, but 1 and 2, they broke up. The date didn't go on. It didn't work out. So they're not going on another date. They're not seeing each other, but they do bypass each other in the neighborhood at the local grocery store. They kind of like look at each other, but one's kind of like, and two's like, well, you know what? Throw it in the trash. He's like the rest of these little hoes out here. I didn't bleed myself, but I digress. Continue. But the FDA would require individuals to be off PrEP for 3 months, right, before donating, because of concerns that taking the medication increases your likelihood of getting a false negative HIV test. The newly proposed rule also continued to specifically defer individuals who have had any type of sex for money and drugs from donating for 3 months as well. Don't they know it's 2023? Again, sex work is work. Like, what's happening here? Now, although I may feel that way, and some of you who are watching may feel that way, transactional sex is often higher risk for HIV due to the decreased condom uses. Blanket deferrals without assessments of actual behavioral risk seems based more on prejudice against sex work, substance use, and poverty than on evidence. So it's sort of a trick bag here, which is why I said there's a little bit of like, here's some breadcrumbs, good luck. But rather than lean on assumptions, updated FDA guidelines should ask more detailed behavior-based questions that reflect the science of HIV transmission. Beyond improving the blood donation process, better questionnaires can help educate more Americans about HIV risk. The FDA is clearly trying to create more inclusive and evidence-backed policies. The proposed changes will likely reduce stigma for some Americans, but if this is a way that we're doing it, this is a great opportunity to educate those Americans, and hopefully they can educate the Americans that they're around as well. If you want to learn more about that, I will go ahead and drop the link in the description right here, and you can go ahead and read a little bit more of that on yourself. I said what I said. I'm going to move past to my next story, and this is this was a tricky story, right? And I got to take my glasses off and wipe my eyes because my shea butter's kind of running. Just want to get some of that down there. Yep. All right. Gotta be delicate with my eyes. Okay, good. That was back on. Okay. Back to looking like a Naruto character. I mean, honestly, I really do. I mean, I don't mind it. But anywho, into our next story. Nimoy Lewis at the Office of Federal Housing Advocate released a report that explores the financialization of housing and its impact on racialized community in Ontario, Canada. Though the story is outside of the United States, it gives great details on ways that we can approach and address housing issues. But it also talks about the systemic racism of what is going to be coined in this article or in this report, financialization, that harms specifically Black people. But in this story, I put it as racialized because not only are Black people affected, but there are intersections within the Black identity. And then, of course, there are people of color that experience this financialization hardship. But the term financialization has significant utility in describing the finance-led housing accumulation that has transformed housing ecosystems in urban rental markets in Canada and beyond. Missing from the discourse, however, is a deeper understanding of the anti-Black nature of financialized landlords' everyday business and management practices in Canada. The objective of this report is to provide research and evidence to better understand how financialization operates, its impact on a person who are members of a disadvantaged group, and potential policy and regulatory solutions, particularly at the federal level. Lewis argued that the increasing financialization of the housing market, which has resulted in the commodification of housing, has disproportionately affected racialized communities, leading to homelessness, displacement, and lack of affordable housing. He continues to provide evidence to support the above and highlights the need for policies that address systemic racism and promote equitable access to housing for all Canadians. I chose this article particularly because it can prove valuable for the socio-spatial impacts of financialized landlords and black renters here in Chicago and also in the state of Illinois. I can't speak on other experiences because my identity is black and queer, but I thought that this would be helpful for anyone who's doing work in the housing market, who are landlords or maybe on the other end. But I encourage you to take a look at this. Although it's not in our country, some of the tactics and strategies that he talks about are quite interesting. I skimmed through it a bit. It's quite long. It's about 57 pages, but it's a really good read if you have the time. The report also calls for greater engagement with affected communities and for the prioritization of voices in policy making. Overall, Lewis emphasizes the importance of understanding the racialized impacts of housing policies and the need to address them to create a more equitable and just society. If you want to learn more about this particular article, I encourage you to take a look at this report itself. I'm going to drop both the statement and the link to the article in the chat. Feel free to check it out if you do have the time. Now I want to go ahead and go over to a little bit of a fun story. Well, before I move my lower third, like when I tell you I screamed so loud when this news came to me, when Scott shared it with me, Luna got so scared she barked, and then she barked at the door, and then she came at me, and then she barked at me. It was so weird. It was so funny. But the casting for House the Musical was announced a few days ago. In the role I auditioned for, I'm really excited about this. House the Musical is a coming-of-age story of in the age of House. That's an interesting line. House Musical, coming of age in the age of House, tells the story of Dwayne, who will be played by me, finds the strength to come out of the closet by sneaking into warehouse clubs, where house music was born. I did not know that. Southside Chicago. House Musical is a celebration of both the BIPOC LGBT experience in Chicago and the explosion of a new musical genre called house music. It captures the energy and the excitement of that brief time when house music was being born, when young Chicago musicians and DJs were creating raw, sample-based tracks, and those tracks were becoming hits in Europe, even though they were being ignored in the US. I mean, look, are we really surprised? It is America, but anywho. At the same time, it captures the beginnings of the emerging Black LGBT community of Chicago, which brought people together through the shared personal struggles, standing up to bullying and homophobia, fighting discrimination within the greater LGBT community, and the bravery of battling HIV/AIDS when there were no treatments. Camp Song Productions returns with the world premiere of House Musical, and this is a book by Marcus Waller. I encourage you all to check it out. The music is by Scott Free and also with Michael Foley, and the lyrics are by Scott Free and Marcus Waller. House Musical is directed by Dion Walton, no relation, and will run from April 20th to April 30th, 2023 at the Center on Hallstatt's Hoover-Lipton Theater. And you can locate that through your Google Maps. If you need the address, I'll just share it here, but it is 3656 North Hallstatt, and you can come check out that show between April 20th and April 30th. I strongly encourage you to check out the musical itself. Tickets go on sale on March 6th at the centeronhallstatt.org. The preview performance is Thursday, April 20th at 7:30 p.m. with a post-show discussion to follow. Opening night is Friday, April 21st at 7:30. Performances will run Thursday through Sunday at 7:30 p.m. through April 30th. I'm so excited for you all to be a part of this and really honored to be working with this amazing cast. Look at all of these beautiful black faces. Wait, hold up. Can we get them applause? You know, it's not every day that I feel like I get to be involved in stuff like this. So I'm really happy. I'm really excited about this. If you want to learn more about the musical itself, I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in the chat. Feel free to take a look at that bad boy. And again, come check it out. You might get to see me. I could love to see your face and talk with you. Now, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our last and final piece of content today, which is our events. There is a lot happening here in Chicago. And y'all, like, I feel like disoriented a little bit by all of this, but I feel really happy about it because that means there's just so much stuff to do. I don't plan on going to all of them, I'll be honest, but if you have time, I encourage you to check it out. But it's only just a week away, actually, the virtual 2023 Illinois Reentry Conference, Advancing Criminal Health and Social Justice, takes place. We are excited, or I should say they're excited, and I'm excited to share this information with you, but they're excited to host this annual event and hope that you can plan to join them as well. The conference brings together public health professionals, healthcare providers, social service professionals as well, and members of the community to rediscover, reimagine, and build skills around health equity, social justice, and reentry services for current and formerly incarcerated individuals here in the state of Illinois. If you want to learn a little bit more about how you can get involved with this particular conference, I would go ahead and post a link in the chat. Take a look at that bad boy. And I really hope that you can make it. It looks like a really great time. I went to it back in 2021 and it was beautiful. I got this beautiful gift box. I wish I brought the picture up here. You can see it, but it's on my Instagram. And I got these amazing treats and prizes from people who were formerly incarcerated and created their own business, right? They created a future. They manifested a future. And I'm telling you right now, I actually want to go back, and I think I want to go back and get those chocolate chip cookies, because those cookies were fire. Like, they were fire. I'm getting off topic. Going on to our next story. If you are interested in getting back into some education, then this is for you. You're invited to join the first of its kind Train the Trainer, conference in sexual and gender minority health care. Advancing Excellence in Sexual and Gender Minority Health Education, a Train the Trainer course for all healthcare professionals, will be held live and virtually on Friday, March 24th to Sunday, March 26, 2023. Over the course of the 3 days, attendees will collaborate with experts and a community of peers to discover best practices in delivering sexual and gender minority health education to colleagues and trainees in your healthcare organization. The course is ideally for PCP, primary care providers, psychologists, nurses, physician's assistants. Say that 3 times in a row. Physician's assistant. I'm not going to embarrass myself, but you get what I'm trying to say. Nurse practitioners, pharmacists, and specialty physicians. If you're interested in learning more about this particular event, I encourage you to get involved with it. I'll drop the link in the chat. Feel free to take some time to take a look at that bad boy. I encourage you to register prior to the week before. You definitely don't want to wait that long. Make time for this and really dedicate to this. This looks like a great opportunity to meet like-minded individuals who want to make change. On to our next discussion I have here is a great organization that I came from back early last year. But you all right, fam? I mean, are you? It's not your fault. Disability Lead is holding a community conversation about Black mental health. And as you can see, this is going to be a beautiful and warming discussion, in my opinion. The disability community has seen a rapid growth of individuals living with mental illness, and the results of the mental health challenges that a lot of folks are facing, especially those who are facing multiple marginalized identities. As a result, they're partnering with Planned Parenthood, Illinois Action, and the Disabled People of Color Coalition and the UIC Disability Culture Center to bring you a panel discussion about mental health in Black communities. Mark your calendars for February 22nd to join the important conversation about culturally sensitive and trauma-informed care, grief, and Black joy. If you're interested in learning more about this particular event, I go ahead and posted the event registration page in the chat, and I encourage you to check it out. It's virtual. I've been a part of some of the disability lead conversation while being an employee, of course, but I get their newsletter here and I try to get involved when I can. But it's a great group of people, a great organization, and I think this conversation is going to be very fruitful. So if you are interested in learning about some of those things, I encourage you to get your tail butt over there. But moving over to our great BAI Black AIDS Institute, which I am repping here. Let's go ahead and be there, uniquely and unapologetically black, just for you. In celebration of Black History Month on February 22nd as well. So you got two choices. You can go to BAI's event, which is also online, or you can go to Disability Leads event. But in this particular event, Black AIDS Institute and Treatment Action Group will have an important discussion with Dr. Onyema Abugu, and I want to make sure I say that right, Obugu, associate professor at Yale School of Medicine, infectious disease physician, educator, researcher, and clinical trial investigator on the history of the Black community's participation in HIV biomedical prevention and vaccine research. This sounds like a really good one to be a part of. During this discussion, they'll dive into the unique relationship that Black communities have with clinical research, while also providing the latest updates on HIV vaccine research. It's all happening on Instagram Live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which means it's going to be happening at 6 p.m. So if you are getting off at work at 5, you better clock out, get your phone out, throw your earphones, get on Facebook Live or Instagram Live and check out that discussion. If you want to know where you can, go and watch that, I'm going to actually drop their @ tags. You can just search for both of those where you can actually watch where that's going to be held at. I encourage you to check both of those out. They look phenomenal. On to our next story. While the lifespan of people living with HIV has increased, the HIV response must now shift focus towards the increasing health span, the overall health and quality of life of people growing older with HIV. There is an urgent need to better understand the myriad of unprecedented and uniquely health challenges that growing older with HIV entails. The International AIDS Society is delighted to share the recording in the slide deck from their recent webinar titled Growing Older with HIV in the Treat All Era. This event was actually held on February 7 back in 2023. I did not share this with y'all because them was just busy. And I'm glad they got the recording and the slides. I'm putting that in the chat where you can go ahead and access all of that great information. I think this is such a great webinar, particularly when I first was diagnosed with HIV. I was really concerned about what does this mean for me in the future? How long will I live, right? I know that I will live, but how long will I live healthily? And what are the things that I need to do to make sure that I am taking in charge of my health? And a lot of that information was not out in 2014. And since then, that has changed, right? There are some studies out there, but I think this conversation will be very fruitful for anyone who is interested in learning more about this. Get involved. Get in tune, stupid. On to the next chat, or next story, I should say. And I'm really excited about this because it's James Baldwin, and I love James Baldwin. But Flicks and Chill. This is a really good one. So this comes from the Chicago Black Gay Men's Caucus. Friday, they're going to be having a Flicks and Chill where you can join them. They'll be watching the movie I Am Not Your Negro, and this will be happening again on Friday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. in person at 6323 South Cottage Grove Avenue. If you feel the need to get involved and meet other folks and discuss the social aspect of James Baldwin's work, this might be the event for you. This documentary was released back in 2016, and it filmed in a social critique film essay based on James Baldwin's unfinished work, manuscript. Now, that was a whole mouthful, but James Baldwin was really involved with a lot of things. He had a lot of writings that were uncompleted. This film kind of pieced some of those things together to really tell the essence and and I wouldn't say a completeness to his story, but it kind of brings us full circle to the work and the life of who James Baldwin was and what he stood for. This documentary follows where Baldwin left off and goes on to unpack and intertwine the tremulous feats against racism today. So I encourage you to check this out. And if you aren't sure if you want to go check this out, guess what? It's free 99. So you go get your butt over there. All you need to do is pay for gas or a bus ticket or a train ticket, and you just show up, honey. There are people there. There's socialization there. There may be popcorn there. I'm not sure. Bring your own popcorn just in case. You never know. Treat it like it's going to the movie theaters. You just gotta have the stuff. You want to bring some stuff. But you get it. Anywho, I just want to thank you all for joining me today. This has been such an honor. I thank you all for coming back and joining this Restream. I know that you probably have a bunch of things going on and you're quite busy, but I want to thank you again for tuning in to the Restream for today's report. I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. And before we go, I want to take a moment to remind you to subscribe to my channel or even like my channel. You can go ahead and see that information here up on the screen. That's where you can find me. That's my LinkedIn or my Linktree. You can just search Linktree and you can put Hopeful in Victory and it'll pull up my page. And you can access all of the mini channels that I'm on and get involved with. Hey, if you don't like YouTube or Facebook, you can find me on TikTok and you can see a lot of my quirkiness and who I am and what I be trying to hide from y'all, because I am a very strange kid. I'm not a strange kid. I'm a strange man. I've always been a strange person. Like growing up as a kid, I was just the odd person, but I think that's one of the beautiful characteristics about me, because my brain is like a fucking massive computer, but like anyone else's brain, but not like mine's. But if you have any other questions, further comments, please feel free to leave them in the chat here. I haven't seen anything here, but that must mean you all are just listening. So, but if not, reach out to me via email at therealdustylion@gmail.com. I always love hearing from you and appreciate your feedback. Once again, thank you for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you all in the next live stream, which is happening next week on Monday at 7 a.m. bright and early. So have your tea mug and your tea ready. In the meantime, in between time, take care, give yourself space, give yourself grace, and have a great rest of your day and have a great rest of your week. Mwah. Bye.